It is 19 hours 30 all across Guyana, and it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadio alongside his co-host Mr. Leonard Gildari. This evening, their esteemed guest, former President of Guyana, Mr. Donald Ramotar. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening to you, sir, and good evening to my co-host Leonard Gildari. Good evening to former President Donald Ramotar, and ladies and gentlemen all across Guyana. Welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet again tonight, the ending of yet another week. A week in which the goalposts keeps shifting for an incumbent that seems to want to stay in power regardless of the costs. Ladies and gentlemen, as we meet tonight, I want to remind you that if one were to take the total of all the legal bills that has been spent and will be spent on all of these cases, that money would probably have been feeding all the needy across this country. But ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Granger, his team continue to sit in office against the will of the electorate. They continue to occupy a seat even though the people of this country spoke since March 2nd and they were kicked out of power. And today, we have Mr. former President Donald Ramotar with us. And ladies and gentlemen, before I invite Mr. Ramotar to say a few words, I just want to make a certain statement so that I can welcome him with, again, the backdrop. Mr. Ramotar, former president, sir, and ladies and gentlemen, there is a particular acting out of a script that seemed to have been written years ago. In 2017, Mr. Ramotar, David Granger, in a meeting in Georgia, said to PNC colleagues there that he cannot see how APNO AFC could retain power in 2020. He admitted that since 2017. However, Mr. Ramotar, after that statement, one could have seen that David Granger came home and they started to put things in place. They were upset by the unexpected no confidence motion, but they started to put things in place to rig these very elections that he thought he could not win. Mr. Ramotar, David Granger, it is alleged, well, not alleged, we all know this. David Granger went and he unilaterally appointed Patterson as the chairman of GCOM. To all the viewers and listeners out there, can you imagine if GCOM was chairman today, what would have happened? The moment Mingo did his declaration, it would have been done. Patterson would have done, because that's why he was appointed. They did not expect that people would speak out against Patterson. Patterson appointed Mr. Lowenfield. Patterson appointed the secretariat as it is. And unfortunately, the good lady, Madam Claudette Singh, inherited these. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a unique problem. Mr. Donald Ramotar, I bring you into this conversation, ask you for your comment here, sir, because you have lived through the dark years when Burnham would have massively rigged the Guyanese election, sir. Am I right to say that this script seems to have started before, and it seems like APNO FC spend their 5 years in power planning to rig an election instead of improving this country? Mr. Ramotar, welcome to room 592, sir.
Thank you, and I endorse what you've said. In fact, I believe that the conspiracy started much earlier, on the very moment that they got into the government. The very fact that they created a Ministry of Citizenship was the first signal. I wrote about that before in some of the articles and letters that I've been writing to the press, that there was no reason for that ministry to exist. It has never existed before. No one ever complained that in the Ministry of Home Affairs that there was too much of work to be done and so on and so forth. So my own view is that from the very beginning they had planned to rig the elections to stay in power, and that is because they know that what they wanted to do was to use the government more to enrich themselves than to do anything for the people of this country. What we're seeing happening in our country now, it's not politics anymore. The PNC has the leadership of the PNC, the small cabal that runs the PNC, is now showing the true nature. This is more of a mafia than it is a political party, because what they're trying to they're trying to create a huge heist against the treasury of this country, against the assets of this country, for a very few, for a handful of people that controls the PNC. And that is what they're defending now, is some of the ill-gotten gains that they have had. I have heard some people and some articles are being written which I don't agree with. Some are international articles and local articles, and they're blaming oil for all of this. But this is not oil to be blamed for this. This is the nature of the PNC that we're dealing with. This is a gangster cabal in power that is intended that they don't care. They don't care of the consequences of this country. Imagine in a few days' time, Guyana will be at the international court to argue its case on the border issue with Venezuela. And what they're doing here, hanging on to power illegally, undemocratically and illegally, is harming us, harming every single Guyanese, whether they voted for PVP or whether they voted for APNU AFC. And it is a major damage to our society. That is an immediate consequence you can see of their anti-national, of their unpatriotic nature of this bunch that is now trying to stay on to power illegally, even though the people have said that they should go.
You lived through, sir, you lived through some of the rigging that took place from 1964 to 1985. At one stage, I believe it was said that the 1985 elections were even more massively rigged than the ones before that. Mr. Ramotar, how would you compare this rig to the rigs of the 1980s? Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about the oil rig. And I know Mr. Grains will say what is rigging? He doesn't like this word rigging. But Mr. Ramotar, how do you compare this rig?
Well, they all were horrible, I could tell you. They were all horrible. The 1973 with the shooting of the comrades at quarantine number 64, who were called, all they were calling for was to conk the boats to the place of poll. And they said that was impossible to be done. And so where they use a lot of force in order to impose themselves on the people of this country. And the 1985, as you said, was most massively rigged. The Desmond Hoyt election was the most massively rigged election in our country. You're true, completely true of what you said there. So I think they were all bad. The difference with this one is I think it took a step, additional step, than that is trying to steal the election in the full view of the whole world, in which they have seems to have lost all pretense of shame and all pretense of self-respect, and in the full glare of the Guyanese people and of the international community, they tried to steal this election. Previously, like some of the previous elections, they did some things that were hidden, top ballot boxes and so on and so forth. But this one was in the full glare of the public.
Mr. Ramotar, as a former president of this country, you would have lost power to the same set that now holds on to power and not respecting the will of the electorate. Sir, if you were to look at what Lowenfield is doing now, and knowing that some of the members of this current secretariat was there in the 2015 election, does it put any suspicion in your mind that a narrow loss of the PPP in 2015 then might have been not a loss at the poll, but some machinations?
Well, I've said that over and over, openly and publicly, that I'm convinced that the 2015 elections were also rigged, not as massively as this one, but it was also rigged in 2015. The same Lowenfield, who was the chief elections officer, that was before, I think just before he really became a rogue, that he had said to the Elections Commission when they were asking him to announce the election, he had said then that he couldn't announce these elections because he found fictitious statements of poll. And the Elections Commission, the commission told him, well, announce the box that you are confident with. And he put aside 400 boxes. And then the next day, without anything changing, even though we had meetings with the commission, with Suraj and all of them, and they promised to come back 22 boxes, they never did. And they went ahead and announced the elections. By then, Lowenfield was compromised completely because the steps that he took after, if he thought the elections were free and fair, why did he go to the extent of, he should have been very happy to have an audit of that elections and to try to facilitate the elections petition that we've had. But he did everything to stop it. He contested it. It was amazing to see him contesting an election, and which very clearly said to me that he became compromised, and he began to do. And now it's more because you know that you heard about all the lands that he have been given over the last 5 years that he has acquired. This government has passed a lot of land and so forth to him. And I heard that he's buying up a lot of properties in the village that he came from on the quarantine. So I think he's compromised himself tremendously.
Well, you mentioned something extremely interesting there, Mr. Ramotar. Leonard, former president has said just now something that is akin to what has happened again. He said that in the 2015 elections, this same gentleman had wanted to burn away over 400 boxes, and he ended up magically bringing them back in, but only burn away enough, which was, according to Mr. Ramotar, about 20 odd boxes, that gave the victory to APNU AFC. And it's like the same script again, Mr. Ramotar. Did I say that? Did I represent it well there, sir?
No, I think it's a little bit different.
Please correct
I think
it.
he was.
Correct.
I think at the beginning he was trying to do something proper, and he put aside 400 boxes which he thought was compromised. Okay. What happened between that night and the next day when he announced the election? I think over that period of time he became compromised, and he didn't bother he announced the election despite the fact that he himself said that there were 400 fictitious statements of poll.
So, Leonard, there is a thread.
And I think from then on, he became a rogue, and he became part of the APNU plot. So he probably resigned himself that he will just collaborate with them and probably see what he could get out of it, it looks like, and to do the things that he's done now.
What was the story, if I may, Mr. President? What is the story behind those fake statement of polls that would have surfaced in 2015?
Well, as I said, it was Lowenfield who first brought that to the attention of the Elections Commission, the commissioners at a meeting of the Elections Commission, and he said that there were a lot of fictitious statements of poll. And he couldn't call the elections at that point in time. He couldn't call it then, he said. And but as I mentioned, he decided to go ahead and announce the elections.
Because if I remember well, at that time, Leonard, Granger himself was on air demanding Release your statement of polls. Release your statement of polls. You remember that video, Leonard?
And it was actually, they were actually released. I think some of the statements of poll that were released were probably fictitious statements of poll as well
Wow.
that they released to them.
Have you ever thought back, sir, as to how many votes would have probably been fraudulent in the 2015 elections?
I had hoped that these things would have come out of the elections petition, which was never heard, which is also an indictment on our judiciary as well. And an elections petition was never called. Our elections were held before the Trinidad election and before the elections in Kenya in 2015, and both those elections had election petition. The one in Trinidad was heard and it was lost. The one in Kenya was won, the opposition won, and they had to have a re-election. The judge ordered a re-election. And up to now, the 2015 elections petition in Guyana cannot be heard.
But Mr. Ramotar, Guyanese in 2015, that change of government, a lot of Guyanese seem to have been attracted to the big tent politics that APNU AFC had offered, and they saw that it meant a lot of people were coming together under one big tent. I don't think anybody foresaw that, notwithstanding the big tent politics, that Granger would have taken absolute control. Well, the PNC would have taken absolute control of the parliament. It took 2 years for Guyanese to see when Granger was appointing his former army persons in all top positions, and PNC persons were all over. And you remember that famous statement from Walter Lawrence and so forth.
Yeah. No, I think from the very outset they started to dismiss a lot of people and in order to put in people who would, two things they started to put in. They started to put in people who help them, facilitate them to rig elections and facilitate the massive corruption that has taken place over the last 5 years. Some ministers used to live extremely modestly. Now they have 3 and 4 mansions all over the place, and the wealth that they have is extraordinary. Up to today, I heard today or yesterday, I heard that some of the work that is being done at this new hospital that they're building converting the hotel into a hospital. I heard one of the men who one of the big contractors who's there doing a lot of the work there, millions of dollars in work he has. His mother-in-law is the PS of the Ministry of Health. So there's a lot of this type of and there seems to be in this period, even though conventionally the government should not be doing these things, there seems to be a mad rush as much as possible to hand out. I saw in the paper BK got some big contracts and all of these things are happening, and there seems to be a massive raid on the treasury going on right now.
Well, there is no money in the treasury. Mr. Ramotar, I want to come back to something that would have happened under your watch. Under your watch, you had pushed, and your government would have pushed the creation of a specialty hospital. And I think the bill, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this carefully. The PPPC had propositioned a specialty hospital. The bill, I think the building of it, so when I say bill, that is what I meant. The expense of it would have been above $1 billion Guyana dollars. It was about just over $500 million for startup. However, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, that was to build from scratch, to build from maiden ground right up. It was not to refurbish. Mr. Ramotar, that program would have been scrapped. I think the combined opposition would have voted that program to $1 and virtually killed it. What went through former President Ramotar's mind when you see a refurbishing project that will be much more? I think conservative figures are that it would meet about $3 billion to complete that facility at Ocean View.
Well, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, that I've been around for a while. So not very much surprised me with this group that is running the country. These people, as I said, are proving to be not politicians, but mafia-type operators. And their main purpose is very clear. I mean, it is so transparent now that their main purpose has nothing to do with development. Their main purpose has to do getting themselves rich. That same project that you spoke about. It really started under former President Jack Dio, and then we had a lot of problems with the contractor, and we took the contractor to court, and we got judgment against him, and we seized a lot of steel and material that he had to repay some of them. It was enough to repay some of the money that we had advanced him. As soon as the government changed, in a matter of days, that whole container was handed over to BK and Tiwari, and therefore the government got nothing, and they scrapped the whole. They had voted against it, but I think in Parliament we had passed it by a very slim majority, because one of their MPs got sick and wasn't there to vote, and we got it passed by a one vote, but and we would have moved ahead with it, and that is why we had taken the matter to the court. But when they got in government, they scrapped it.
They scrapped it, yeah.
And
Mr. Yeah, go on.
Sorry about that. Captain Jerry Gavai would have been on this program a couple of weeks back, and he always keeps telling the story about the private sector's role in your conceding back in 2015, Mr. President. Could you tell us what's the story there? I think the private sector was in your room, he says, in your office at the Ministry of the Presidency there, and they would have told you a couple of things. I think they had a meeting with you, and then it was Rishi Persaud, then as a chairperson, would have stood up and says, Mr. President, I think based on the figures, you guys appear to have lost the elections, and I think they walked out. But after that, you would have conceded, knowing that you probably would have won the election because something went wrong with the elections. At what point in time did you decide to concede?
It is true that the private sector came to me and told me to that they think I should concede the election. I explained to them. I showed them also all the things that I've had, the boxes that I've had, and I showed them the information that was in my possession, that some of these things were wrong. I told them about the boxes that Lowenfield put aside, and I thought that the elections were rigged. But they seem to have been very convinced that that we had lost, that the PPP Civic had lost the election, and they were asking me to concede. I did not concede because GCOM did not fulfill the agreement that they had with me to come at least. I asked them even to come 5 boxes, and if I'm wrong, because I didn't want to hold up the election, then if I'm wrong, that I will concede the election. And then it was Soraj Bali who said 22 boxes wouldn't take us an hour to come, and we will count all 22 boxes, and which he never did. So, but what I did, I know what some of these things the impact and the harm it can do to our country. So when the Elections Commission announced the elections, even though I was convinced that it was rigged, I thought that it was more important for our country to move forward than for me to fight to just stay in power like that. And I believe at that point in time that most people felt I was probably in a minority in thinking that the elections were rigged, and being convinced that the election was rigged. But I did not want to harm the development of our country. I did not want to create an atmosphere to divide the people in our country and so forth. So when the election result was announced, I immediately had a meeting with the last meeting with my cabinet, and I told them, all the ministers, that they should cooperate and to have a smooth transition, that most important is the welfare of the people of the country. And we set up a small team, a small body, to work with the APNU AFC to have a smooth transition towards a new government and not to have any type of disruption. And I asked my ministers at that last meeting to make themselves available for any information or questions that they will have, and to pass over some of the unfinished business that we were doing, some of the things that we had in place, to pass it over to them. Hopefully, I thought that they would have continued with many of the things that we've had, and that is how our government operated in that last meeting that we had with the cabinet. Those were the final instructions. I asked all of them to return their cars and whatever other property that they have. I even told them, I said, these people, because I know them a long time, I said, these people that is coming into government now are very, very vindictive people. So even if you have telephone for the government, hand it in back to them and don't keep any of government's property, which we
Right.
actually did.
And a
And
quick clarification there for those who probably don't know, in terms of the timeline for when elections were held, to the time of declaration, to the time of when you would have met with your cabinet to give them certain instructions, could you give us a little idea as to how that went in terms of days, weeks,
then
maybe?
immediately, the day that the elections were announced, we immediately began to hand over things to the government. We didn't stay, and I could tell you this: I didn't even spend another night in State House. I packed and came home to my own home in
Right.
Good for Walking. Where I didn't sleep a single night in the State House when I was not president.
I want to take you back to that time again. Viewers and listeners, it is important that we remember some of these things. In fact, Mr. Ramotar, when he was president, he and we didn't see eye to eye. I had opposed a lot of the initiatives and stuff like that. There
I
is
hope you see your folly now.
no, it was not a folly. We learn as we go by. But sir, during your tenure, I remember, and ladies and gentlemen, I remember that we had all spoken out when Roger Luncheon, as head of the presidential secretariat then, cabinet secretary, had appeared on the PPP's list, their slate, going into the 2015 election, and we all spoke out against it. And the gentleman immediately, I think he resigned. However, in 2020, we saw coming up to the 2020 elections, Joe Harman had retained his position, and it is only when people objected and vehemently objected to him being on the slate and still be in the position that some change, but though the change happened very late. Sir, a lot of the things that, the hypocrisy is real, isn't it? A lot of the things that the APNU AFC criticized and attacked your government for, they end up doing that and even worse.
Well, yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of things have been circulated. Some of the speeches of Mr. Granger that he spoke about before the elections, when I legally, within the constitutional rights, when I prorogued the parliament, he was speaking about have to give up and have to do that and so forth, although it was all legally done. And here they are doing all kind of illegal things, and seems to trying to find ways to justify it.
Correct.
So you're right. The hypocrisy it is so much. It is so much that it is
it's
more
a slap in our faces.
overwhelming to see what.
Yeah, it's a slap in our faces.
More than a slap in the face. It is a disgrace to our country what is taking place. It is. These are people, as I said, that they have demonstrated that they have no patriotism, no nationalism. How could they humiliate our country like this? To what they're doing, the whole war against them. Just today, again, the United States government has over and over again come out. The senators across the aisle
Republican and
saying that they are
Democrat.
here illegally. All the governments, most of the governments in the Caribbean, and the governments of the United States, Canada, Denmark, the European Union, UK, all of them are saying that and then they are cursing these people out in all kind of vile way that they are attacking people. Look at the way they have been attacking the chairman of CARICOM. And I think the step that CARICOM has taken, the stand that CARICOM has taken, all of us in the Caribbean should be extremely proud of the quality of leadership that Mia Montley is giving the CARICOM right now. And it was a very bold, and it tells you that CARICOM will no longer tolerate this type of nonsense that the PNC wants to get along with here.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So
Mr.
I
Ramotar,
think that it's a shame. It is probably one of the most damaging period, not only for Guyana but for the region, because we're part of CARICOM, and CARICOM themselves are embarrassed that one of their member states will be behaving in this
right.
totally undemocratic. I would even go so far to say, in this time, in this 21st century, it is almost an uncivilized type of behavior that we see.
Correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wish to remind you all, and here I go. I just stole the thunder away from my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildari. This was supposed to be his part to do, but we're brothers. Today, this evening,
I think you're trying to set me up there.
This evening, as a matter of fact, Mr. Ramotar referred to it just now. 3 of the senators from both sides of the aisle, from the Republicans and Democrats, have asked the authorities in Guyana to begin a democratic transition of power. Let me repeat. The senators have asked the authorities in Guyana to begin a democratic transition of power. Mr. Ramotar, I don't know how else, what other words one could say to persons who have lost their ability to even feel an iota of embarrassment. What other words can people say?
Well, I think the logical thing to go is follow the money. So that's a normal statement I think you auditors like to use. Follow the money. This is not. I mean, you can't say that they're defending national interest. They're not defending the good name of the country. In fact, they're throwing it down the sewer. The good name of Guyana. Therefore, they are defending self-interest here.
Correct.
Tremendous self-interest that they are defending.
Let's talk a little bit about the inner workings of government and good governance. You mentioned earlier. You mentioned the Ministry of Citizenship. Does Mr. Ramotar, former president, when you saw the creation of the Ministry of Citizenship, was it in your thought, or am I wrong to say that the Ministry of Citizenship was created for 2 purposes? 3. 1 was to facilitate a potential rigging of these elections. 2 was to basically dilute whatever powers would have gone to Ramjatan. It was pulling a rug out from Ramjatan's feet. And 3 was to find a place for the minister. What are your thoughts to those things, sir?
Yeah, yes, and I think also because the PNC put their man in that position. They had to give Ramjatan something, but as you rightly said, that probably at that early stage, they didn't totally trust him. But now I think he has gone over completely. He and Nagamoto seems to have lost all shame. They seem to have lost all self-respect. And some of the things that they used to talk about defending democracy and so forth, they have revealed themselves that they for what they really are. And so you're right. I think you're right about those things. But I also think that it was to give them the control of the birth certificates, of ID cards, have something to do with these type of things. And I think my own view is that the main purpose was to prepare the rigging of election. I believe strongly, this is my personal view, I believe strongly that the no confidence motion in December 2018, did put a spoke in the wheel and upset their plans, and maybe because of that they didn't get a chance. That is one of the reasons they were fighting to have house-to-house campaign, house-to-house registration, and so forth, because that is when that plan would have kicked in to rig the list, so that they didn't have to do no massive rigging of the election. if they had gotten opportunity to rig the list, and they didn't have that opportunity because of the no confidence motion. They couldn't go on, and they couldn't really discredit the list because the list was constantly being updated every 6 months, and the list itself was very, very clean and very
correct.
Good. So I think that I think the main purpose, in my view, the main purpose was to use it to rig the election, which the no confidence motion snatched away from them.
So you mentioned two names there. You mentioned Mr. Branston and Moses Nagamutu. Both of these men were your buddies. They were your comrades in arms. They were your colleagues. It is one of them, as of last week or week before, accused you in an attack, and I will tell you what was the attack, and you can comment on it if you don't mind, sir. They attacked you that you had hired some firm, and the purpose for which you hired this Cambridge Analytica was for them to create advertisements about Mandirs and Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese. What's your comment to that, sir?
Well, I could ask you, have you ever seen such advertisements?
I haven't seen.
And secondly, I could tell you very clearly that Cambridge Analytica very emphatically had absolutely nothing to do with our elections campaign. They were not involved in our elections campaign. They were totally not involved in the elections campaign that we've had. So I could put that to rest immediately. But I'm surprised that Nagamutu has been making this statement when he himself, I don't know if he knows that this PNC government paid millions to a company. They call themselves the CT Group, Crosby
Tech Store, yes.
Group. Millions of dollars they paid to them. Since 2019, they had them working here. They had a meeting in State House, where Nagamutu and Ramjatan were present at that meeting as well. And they, at the end, I think coming to the end, I understand that they didn't want to pay some more money, and they had some disagreements. So what Mark Corton and the top cabal of the PNC was there. So for Nagamutu to making that statement after he has been involved in something like this shows the character or how much he has degenerated. And I would say now, on reflection, that a lot of his posture in the past, it is very clear now that the posture that he adopted in the past, where he was not sincere about a lot of the things that he was doing. For a man to now be part of what is happening here, when the nation is being raped, and when the rights of the most fundamental rights of our people in a democratic society is now being snatched away in such a crude fashion, and Nagamutu is now part and parcel of that, defending that, protecting that with all kind of frivolous arguments, and attacking people who has come in support of the Guyanese people to try to prevent the destruction of democracy in our country. So I think he has absolutely any credibility. He has no credibility left at all in him, and he is.
I was going to ask you about Mr. Nagamutu from the following perspective, and let me repeat. Let me throw it at you. They were your buddies, right? You guys worked together, and I believe you.
Nagamutu.
Yeah, and you would have spent a lot of years together. But it was Nagamutu that not wrote, but he compiled some books on behalf of the People's Progressive Party. One I have in front of me here, the 3 trials of Arnold Rampersad.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah, and in that book, ladies and gentlemen, if you have never read the 3 trials of Arnold Rampersad, please get your hands on it. If you don't have a copy, we'll try to make it available, providing the People's Progressive Party can give us the rights to release copies of it.
So, but I don't think. I mean, I'm I don't speak anymore on behalf of the PPP. The PPP has its general secretary and so forth. I'm still a member of the executive, but I don't think anyone will object to me telling you here in the public, you go straight ahead and circulate the book as widely as possible.
Okay. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is Moses Nagamuto that compiled the 3 trials of Arnold Rampersad, a book that when you read it, it's a booklet actually, not too big, but when you read it, it outlines a lot of the rigging that took place during the 1970s, especially on and around the 1973 election. And there's another book too that speaks to the 1973 elections itself. And so, Mr. Ramotar, here is a gentleman that has probably, he has gotten to where he wanted. He wanted to be in a seat of power. Under the PPPC, he probably saw that he was never going to get there. And so he changed seats. And the man who spoke against rigging is now involved in rigging, would you say?
Yes, he's fully. I mean, it is sad, but to see his evolution, or no, sorry, maybe evolution is the wrong word. His degeneration, that he is degenerated completely, and that is why I question. I mean, when we were buddies and we had all kind of ideals of building this our society and so forth, I question his sincerity about it. His talk about. I question how sincere he was when he was speaking about the freedom and fighting for freedom of our people. And and because how could you move from that position to now being in this position here and defending what is going on in the face of, as I said, everybody saw what was happening. It's glaring. It's not something that was hidden that you can defend. The world saw what was happening, and here is Nagamuto. He has. It shows that he has no conviction, really no conviction.
But a lot of the people, unfortunately or fortunately, history will certainly judge all of us. The WPA, I think there would have been discussions. Am I wrong, sir? There might have been discussions in the past between the WPA and the PPP, and there would have been discussions between yourself and other parties. Well, you meaning the PPP and other parties. But a lot of these people would have left, and they're now in bed with the PNC, the same PNC that you guys have fought your entire life against.
It is amazing. I mean, as I said, it's amazing. The WPA, of course, was at its highest point when Walter Rodney was there, and all of us acknowledged the role that Rodney played. He was a genuine leader. He really was trying to fight for change in our society. But the people that were with him, you know, when you look at the people, their positions now with him, you cannot be surprised that he was assassinated, because these people obviously did not have this conviction. He was probably dragging them along with him because of his own personality, his charisma, and so on and so forth. But they obviously, to swing the way they have swung, and to now to be supporting the same body of people who were involved in the assassination of Walter. Many of them in government had very top and senior positions in the army. And the army, we know that one of the things that was used in the murder of Walter Rodney was the army, the police, and so forth. And these people who claim to have loved Rodney and promote Rodney and so forth, to find themselves in this position, to me, it's very, very hard for me to really comprehend that kind of metamorphosis.
But let's spend a minute, if you don't mind, sir. Under your watch, I believe the Commission of Inquiry into Walter Rodney's assassination would have probably concluded, but the report would have never been tabled at the National Assembly. Was that because there was a transition of government, or?
No, it was stable. I think it was stable, but it was stable. What had happened to it? It was the 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 the, the commission did a lot of work, enough work to give them enough evidence to make conclusion, but they didn't actually conclude all of their work. They didn't. There were still people who they wanted to take testimonies from, but I think they had accumulated enough evidence in order to, and they did subsequently. It was laid in the parliament subsequently, but what has happened? It was played down completely by the WPA themselves. They have never even spoken about it publicly, and it was completely tried to play it down.
So probably the WPA killed Walter Rodney the second time around.
I said that of them because I remember Rupert Ryan in a television program that they had. He said that they were accumulating weapons to overthrow the Bonham regime, and I think they said that because they had to create a platform for their crossing over to the PNC and to justify Bonham's assassination of Walter Rodney. I think, and a lot of them, obviously, were not moved by the same sentiment and by the same philosophical position of Walter Rodney, and they degenerated themselves.
But sir, you had employed people to document the.
Yeah, I think that document. I think they did it, but I think they are probably going to release some of those. That will come out. But the report is there too. The other documentary thing there, and the other. I expect that the other work that was done should be made public anytime.
Okay.
And what would be your comments, sir, on the future of the Alliance for Change?
I don't know if they I think the Alliance for Change is really on the way out. Actually, they are substantially being there's now completely exposed. They got some type of popularity because places like Kaieteur News wrongfully attacked the PVP and started to talk a lot about corruption, and they actually capitalized on some of that falsehood. Fortunately for us, that the PNC has vindicated all of us by their holding of 50 or so forensic audits where they spent hundreds of millions of dollars and found nothing. But still, they continue with the thing. But the Kaieteur News played a big part in helping them to grow because people believe the kind of reputation of that nonsense, that not true, without foundation, and they keep repeating these things, is what made some of the changes that took place. But people now they've seen what has happened.
Let us stick to go back to the. Sorry, Leonard. Let's go back to the inquiry a little bit, sir. What would you say? Might be, if you can, or we probably have to have another session where we could bring the notes, maybe. But what would you say stuck out in your mind for one or two of the highlights of that inquiry and or the conclusions?
Well, to me, on a general area was the cold-blooded way. As I said, all of what we're seeing now, happening here now, has always been there. And the murder of Walter Rodney was like because Walter Rodney was threatening the power of the cabal, the small cabal that is running things here, the leadership of the PNC, not more than 20 or 30 people that have been enriching themselves at the expense of the Guyanese people. And to the shocking thing to me was the cold-blooded way that the systematic way that they went about to assassinate the man for his own strong conviction and for the fact that he was fighting to. I think he was to use Walter Rodney, to use Bob Marley's word. He was encouraging people to liberate themselves from mental slavery that the PNC had some of them.
let's just, if you don't mind, going back to your years as president, sir. What stands out for you, maybe foremost in your mind, as might have been one of the things that you would say, I did that, I'm proud of that kind of thing that you
Well,
continue to
you
do.
realize that I was only in government I was only president for 3.5 years,
Mhm.
and I saw my presidency as continuing the work that the PPP Civic has been doing from 1992,
Mhm.
continue the good work. I supported all of the projects that the PPP had. I thought the Amida Falls, of, that if we had gotten that, we would have been in a far better position today. The Marriott Hotel was constructed mainly. It started under former President Jagdeo, but it was constructed under my time. I think that was extremely important, and it has been proving its worth as a good a good center. We have developed a lot of those areas. And under my 3 years, um, I would say that we have distributed more house lot than any other 3 year period in the history of this country, including the 23 years history of the PPP. And that also, some credit for that will also go to Irfan Ali, who was heading the ministry, and it shows that he has great capacity to get things done. He has a lot of capacity to work. He's a hard worker. He ran more than one ministry. And um, I remember I was going to appoint another minister to help to run tourism, and the whole tourist authority came to me and asked me to keep Irfan Ali there because of how receptive he was with them, and under his guidance of that ministry, how the tourism sector was growing. So what I would say is my great achievement that I'm proud of, that we kept the economy going at the period of time when I got into the government. It was height of the international financial and economic crisis in the world. Many countries in the Caribbean could not pay wages and salaries. Many countries in the United States, people were losing their jobs in the millions. Banks
Mhm.
were closing up and so forth. And we, in that period of time, we were actually um, our country, our economy was growing at a steady rate of 4.5% average over the period of
Mhm.
time. And we kept it growing because in the light of the worst financial and economic crisis in the world, and when a lot of our trade and economic relations internationally was tied with many of the countries that were going through the difficulties, the fact that we were able to do it was for me a very, and we did it also in the
Right.
face of tremendous opposition because we didn't have of the one seat minority. To show you how vindictive these people were, the the anti-money laundering bill was in place before I got into the government, and every time it needed to be renewed, to go to parliament to renew
I
it or to
remember that.
change it, they voted for it when they didn't have the majority.
I
But the
remember that.
moment they got the one seat majority, they use it to try to damage the very
Mhm.
heart of our economy, because the financial sector is at the very heart of your economy. And
Mhm.
it was a deliberate attempt to damage the economy of the country, um, and to and that was their purpose. They saw
But
this
I
damage.
remember that. I remember the games that were played with the anti-money laundering laws. And I also remember, and Guyanese must remember, that the games that were played with the local government elections,
But
because it is the same APNU AFC when they were in opposition, they stalled and stalled and stalled, and they end up blaming
no,
PPP for not
I,
holding.
I kept reminding people of that because I remember that the PPP was ready to go to election when after all that was needed to be done was done. We couldn't hold local government election before 2005 because of the new constitution, things that we were writing in the constitution. But when we were ready, it was Robert Corbyn who asked Bharat Jagdeo not to hold a local government election. And he conceded, and now they're forcing us that we didn't hold local government election.
But,
And
sir,
under me, I must say that I would have,
go on.
under me, I did promise in the campaign that I would hold local government elections. and I was ready to hold the local government elections. But the moment I had a one seat, when I had a minority in the parliament, I was anticipating every year that these people will bring a no confidence motion against me. And and even when I spoke, one of the last meetings I've had with now de facto President Granger, we spoke about the local government elections. So I told him that I'm ready to hold it, but are you going to assure me that you're not going to vote for this no confidence motion? He said he can't give me that assurance because he gave his commitment to the AFC to vote. So I said, well, how can I call the local government elections if this is the position that you have?
Right.
And he raised it to me when we met, and I told him that.
So, to the Guyanese brothers and sisters, viewers and listeners out there, we have asked Mr. Ramotar here to give us the perspective, because we need to keep in mind how the script keep on repeating itself. Ladies and gentlemen, remember that in 2015 and thereabouts, it was APNO AFC that had a majority in government. The PPPC was a minority, in opposition, and the PPPC had a minority government. And so the same APNO AFC had voted for Chronicle, NCN. They voted for $1 for the budget, so because they wanted to defund the Chronicle. And today, the Guyana Chronicle has become the Guyana Rag. Now, what you find happening also, ladies and gentlemen, it is the same Granger and the AFC team that were in opposition then, that had played the games calling for the PPPC to be accountable and transparent on a number of things. And immediately when they got into office, they played on the other foot. Mr. Ramotar, forgetting the division in politics, sir, forgetting that APNO AFC is in power, if we forget their existence for a minute, I want to come at you with something. I believe that the PPPC were not transparent enough in releasing adequate information. So, for example, the hydroelectric project or the specialty hospital. What I feel that you guys comment on this, the opinion is that you guys hid the feasibility studies and you sent out your people to beat people on the head to accept this project. And in that way, people were not, the intelligentsia, the people, the analysts and so forth, were not fully on board because they didn't have the background information. Your comment, sir?
That is probably partly true. Maybe what I would say is not that we were not transparent, but I believe that we didn't push enough. Maybe we should have been more consistent. Because from the moment you talk about it, after 2 days, they came back with the same old thing, same old again, and keep repeating all the time. Goebbels like some of these propaganda war. But I'm glad, because the point I wanted to make to you, because some people are saying that about inclusiveness. I invited the APNO and the AFC to my office, and I had Winston Brassington and Ashley Singh and Robeson Ben with me, and we give the AFC and the PNC a complete information on the hydropower station. Every single thing we give them all the documents, even documents that were commercially sensitive. I asked them to, well, these are commercial stuff, things that have not fully things, but I'm giving it to you to see. I had more than two meetings I had with them, so where they had full briefing on this matter. And I even told them that if they had any questions, after I have given them all the documents, I said, you can take these documents to your specialists, to your technical people, or people who you have faith in. And if you have any questions, I will ask my people to summon another meeting and we will answer you. They never came back to me. They asked for them to visit the hydropower site. We did that. We took the Army helicopter, and at the same time, we gave them a tour of what we were doing at the airport, the new airport that we were building there. They're going to do another refurbished stuff there, and we're not getting a new airport, and double the amount of money for the new airport again that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
And we took them to look at that, and we took them to the Amida Falls, flew them there to see the thing. And I thought that they would have gone ahead with it. Lo and behold, they voted against it. And that was one instance. There was another instance where we had consultation with them. People talk about consultation and involving. I remember the 2012 budget. I was so elated when we had my meeting with them to talk about the budget and what was going on and what we can do. And they asked me that if I could increase the pension, the old age pension, a little bit more. And I said, sure. And in the parliament, I think it was Comrade Sam Hines who, no, it was Ashley who went and announced that we are moving ahead. And he mentioned publicly in the parliament that yes, it was on the request of the opposition leader in a meeting with me that we agreed that we would increase the old age pension and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Then we agreed that what was happening in Linden with the electricity question was a little bit of unfair to the rest of the nation, and that we will gradually bring it back into operation. They agreed with me. And then Comrade Sam Hines wrote his presentation to the National Assembly, showed it to Granger, who was the opposition leader at the time, and together with Ruth Narayan, they looked at it and they said it was all right. When Sam read it out, lo and behold, before the day was over, it was like, what was the biblical thing? Before the cock crowed twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. That is what happened. That is what happened. So when you talk about all of these inclusiveness and working together, it is very difficult to work with people who are so unprincipled. Mm-hmm. Extremely difficult to do that, because we have been doing everything and trying to involve them. Look, when Cherry Dragon came into the government in 1992, one of the first things he did try to do was to set up the Ethnic Relations Commission and put somebody of the quality of Bishop George to head it. The PNC opposed it and course up Bishop George and all of that and tried to sabotage the work of the Ethnic Relations Commission, because, and they did that, they don't want to have a proper functioning Ethnic Relations Commission because of what their politics is fundamentally based on trying to mislead Afro-Guyanese that the PPP civic government is anti-Afro-Guyanese. So what I wanted to say is that I do know that we have been trying to work with them, not only me, but previous PVP civic government bent over backward to involve the PNC opposition, PNC reform, APNU, to try to let us work together. And at every single stage, we were sabotaged. Right then.
Right.
What would you say?
Go ahead.
I have a couple of quick questions, for the good president. 2015, there were some talks that leading into the elections that the U.S. would have told Guyana not to say anything about the discovery of oil. Could you walk us through that? What was the timeline? Did we know before the election that there was oil, or after the election?
I dealt with that with you.
Right. But some people are still asking here.
That one of the programs that you had.
Yes.
And in fact, this is a matter that is in court to some extent, where I said very clearly, I was told that there is strong, what's the word? I'll try to remember the exact word.
Indications, maybe?
There were strong indications that there would possibly be some, they didn't use the word oil that was there, but they were never said to me before elections that oil was discovered there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I mentioned that on more than one occasion.
So it was exploration rather than.
I made a public statement. I had a press statement in that regard, and I sent it out to the media publicly on that matter.
Well, go ahead, Leonard.
Yes, pardon me, dear, my good host. Sir, with regards, we see comparisons being drawn right now. CARICOM, we could list them on hand or two hands. We have CARICOM, Commonwealth, OAS, Carter Center, the ABC in EU countries, everybody. It seems as if the whole world has come down on Guyana or on the coalition to have them do things according to the law and maybe concede according to the recount, or make sure that they adhere to the recount results. What would you say to critics who would draw parallel between Priya Manikchan and Gail Teixeira going to the ambassador's house on July the 4th, and to the criticisms now that would be coming against the diplomats in Guyana?
Um, I would say that it's totally different. It's a totally different thing. I thought, and I'll tell you very frankly, I thought that the then ambassador of the United States was overreaching in some ways, right, of some of the things that he was saying. I was out of the country actually when this happened, and I thought that he was. I think that was the feeling in our cabinet a lot of the time, that some of the comments that he was making, and sometimes we feel without any basis and so forth, that, and we were answering him. We were answering him to defend our country and our country's integrity. We were not trying to steal any elections. We were not trying to do anything undemocratic. We were not breaking any laws. We were not violating any constitution or anything of that nature. So it was vastly different. It was a vastly different type of situation um, than than now. Um, the Americans and the British and the Canadians and the European Union and all of that are standing up in support of our Constitution. Our Constitution, they're standing up to support. They're standing up to support our electoral system. They're standing up to support our laws. This is laudable that you have the international community standing up to defend standing up on the side of the Guyanese people
Hmm.
to defend their fundamental. This is a very fundamental right. When Priya and Gail went to the ambassador's house, they were not fighting them down because they were not defending these rights and so forth. We would never. The
Hmm.
PVP Civic has always been seeking international and regional support in order, because we know that Guyana has great potential, that we can make a big contribution to the development internationally, but at the same time we could be a great embarrassment and we could be a drag on the region and on the international community if we do not do things in a democratic way. And with all the criticism whatever criticism people have against the PVP civic government, they cannot accuse us of being undemocratic.
And if I may, one other question. What would Donald Ramotar, who some would have viewed conceded with grace, say to David Granger at this point in time? Could he walk away also with some level of respect after all that would have occurred after March the 2nd?
Well, I think that he would have been in a far better position if he had done these things earlier. But I still think there's a window, a small window for him, that he can stand up and put an end to this thing. He himself is seeing the harm. I don't know if he's seeing it. He's an intelligent man, and he must be recognizing the damage that this is doing to our country. He must be recognizing the harm that is taking place. He must know about our case that we have on the 30th of June with Venezuela. Why is he endangering us? He must know that he lost the elections. That's the fundamental thing. I don't think that I lost the elections, but I couldn't put my country in danger and put people against each other and all of that. But he has clearly lost an election. They have lost in elections. I think I would say to him, save some dignity and think about the people of this country. Think about the welfare of the masses of Guyana. And the road that you're presently on, if you continue on that road, I don't think you will succeed anyhow. But even if you do for any period of time, you are driving us into poverty and oppression and shame and disgrace. The best thing that you could do right now is to concede and walk away with some of your own personal dignity.
Well, that seems
what I would say.
Yeah, that seems to be in short supply for many of the persons who currently walk the corridors of power. Indeed, honesty, integrity, and dignity seems to be totally lacking from the persons who currently walk the corridors of power. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you we are talking tonight to former President Donald Ramotar, who has kindly agreed to discuss some of what would have transpired during his term in office, and what comparisons we have seen from the 1980s of the years of the deadly rigged elections and 70s and 60s to what is happening now. Because mind you, Granger, now president of Guyana, was in the Burnham's party, the PNC, in the 1970s and 1980s. And, so a lot of these players...
He was a very important leader of the army when the election was rigged massively, and the army was misused to seize ballot boxes.
So one of the other things, viewers and listeners and Leonard, that I want to point out, I've noticed what I felt is a very good comment on social media that I want to share with everyone. Mr. Vincent Alexander, a little while back in room 592, Leonard, he took credit. He said that it was because of his intervention, certain things was not allowed to have taken place in a previous election. And that he thwarted what he saw was an error in the then chief elections officer. Fast forward to 2020. The chief elections officer is doing his own thing, and he's saying nobody can stop him. So isn't it a strange thing that it's the same party, mind you, Alexander, and they didn't turn up to the last meeting to even listen or to take the report, but the same persons would have said, well, they thwarted what appeared to be an attempt the last time.
I'm glad you raised that point, Yog, because I've seen this man, Lowenfield, making a statement and saying that that he's not insubordinate in his action. He's more than the Constitution is very, very clear that he has to take the directions of the commission. He has to take. He is not the boss of the chairman of the Elections Commission. It's the other way around.
Correct.
And there are many clauses in our Constitution. The PPP had made a statement tonight, which I think was a very good statement, pointing out to the clauses in the Constitution that showing where this man is violating, is putting himself above the Constitution. This man is not only violating the Constitution, what he's doing is illegal and criminal almost.
Well, I will add this for your contemplation comment, sir. Lowenfield today, in his release, he said among many things, including what you said just now, he said that he acted in conformity with the laws. And the question that I have for him, Mr. Lowenfield, Major Lowenfield, if you're listening, can you clarify which one of your actions was in conformity with the laws? You made a report using Mingo's declaration. You made another report last week in which you gave the PNC 2/3. You made another report to the commission, the preliminary report to the commission, in which you gave the commission the entire recount results. And then you made another report today, day before yesterday, sorry, in which you are now giving APNO win. So in which one of those reports have you acted in conformity with the law? Leonard, something is very strange here. And to you, Mr. Donald Ramotar, what's your thoughts to this, sir?
Well, I mentioned just now, look, let me read to you what the law says. Section 18 of the Election Law Amendment Act 2000 states, the chief election officer and the commissioner of registration shall, notwithstanding anything in any written law, be subject to the direction and control of the commission. So he's not a free agent, as he's trying to say. He is under the direction, and what he did, his actions that he did today is total insubordination. He should be. I mean, if he was working in the private sector, he would have been fired immediately.
Well, he claims to have a constitutional office. He claims to have a constitutional office, which I found to be quite absurd.
Additionally, let me mention the I think all of these statements are found in which is, I said, a very, very good statement that the PVP made this afternoon. And they quote the law here, and the sections of the law to show that this man is acting in total violation of our Constitution. So it is very, very, the Constitution is very clear, pellucid on Lowenfield's role and the role of the commission.
Okay. Mr. Ramotar, where do you, as a former president, are you suspicious that there are more cards that will be played, or do you see that this thing can come to an end very quickly? Or will, not can. Of course it can, but will it?
I think I would say that I would hope that that common sense prevails, and the ruling that will be made by the Caribbean Court of Justice and also by the Elections Commission would be adhered to. Failing that, and we're in a totally new situation in this country where we have an undisguised dictatorship, and that is calling for another type of struggle that will be on there again. But I am confident. What I can tell you, I have every confidence that the will of our people will triumph.
Sir, given I hate to put you in this spot, but as an experienced politician and currently a related observer, because you're still a member of the executive of the PPP, do you think that there is a likelihood that a declaration could be made, but the incumbent will refuse to step down?
Well, as I said, nothing surprised me by what they do, but I think that they should think very, very clearly of the consequences. Not only is the vast majority of Guyanese people, and not only the PVP supporters, but many of the PNC supporters probably who voted for them will not agree that they want to live in a situation like this. Many of them, I will say that they will not be in agreement. So the 15,000 votes that the PVP beat them by in the elections will turn into hundreds of thousands more, because I have faith in the collective intelligence of the Guyanese people. So I think it will be even stronger. Secondly, the PNC has no support. This government, this coalition has no support in our region. They have no support internationally. And they are very, very clearly going to be in if they are mad enough to take such a step, that the consequences could be extremely severe of them. They can face penalties, they can face sanctions. It could be devastating on them.
And the current situation, though, sir, where the people of Guyana is concerned, what message does Mr. Donald Ramotar, as a former president, still active politician, because you still give advice to your party and you're still in the executive, what advice you have to the frustrated Guyanese that feel that they're being strangled presently? What will you say?
I would say, first of all, some of the feelings that they feel, maybe frustration and so forth, it's quite understandable, and they will be less than humans if they didn't feel some level of frustration because of the behavior of this command, what they're doing to our country. They're dragging us, they're making us a laughing stock to some extent. Some of the things that they're doing from the time of the no confidence motion, the famous 34 and 33, which is the majority of 65. All of those things have done a lot of harm to our prestige and to our people. So I would say to them that we are very close, in my view, in my considered view, we are very, very close to bringing all of the shenanigans to an end when we can focus our energy on construction, on development, of lifting people out of poverty, of creating employment for people, of carrying our country forward to allow it to realize its full potential. That is what I would say that I am optimistic, and I want to urge them to also be optimistic and to be confident that this long night is coming to an end.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to wrap up our program. And my next, my parting question to Mr. Ramotar, former President Donald Ramotar, would be, and sir, I will give you a moment to answer this question, but the question will be, what does former President Donald Ramotar say to current de facto President David Granger? But I'll come to you in a minute to answer that, sir. I would really like you to give your sage, as an elder statesman, your advice. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, Guyana, as we know it, the political situation indeed is taking some twists and turns. It is weekend. Today is Friday. And, from Leonard Gildari and Kaieteur Radio and yours truly, we do hope you have a great weekend. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, the truth about the strength of Guyanese resides not within the hands of the politicians, but resides within your hands, the people of this country. And in saying that, my appeal to you is to continue to ignore the racism, continue to ignore the personal attacks. Try to concentrate and remain focused on the issues. And the issues are, as plain as day, that the current set of politicians continue to attempt to rig these elections, and they continue to attempt to stay in power even though the electorate kicked them out on March 2nd. And with each passing day, they're spending your money, taxpayers' money, to make themselves look good, feel good. And they're entering into contracts that will really mess this country up when the new government is sworn in. Mr. Ramotar, your words to David Granger.
And before we go, just a quick question maybe. Are we going to see a Mr. Ramotar being part of PVP government?
Put it this way, I'm not looking for work. I'm not looking, but I am always available to my party I want the PVP civic government to succeed, because I want Guyana to succeed, and if they feel that there's anything that I could do to help, I will be willing to help. I will be willing to do as much as I can to see the people of this country realize their dream. And to come to your question,
so, yes, what would you say to current President David?
I would tell him that our country is suffering a lot. People are hurting. Many people right across the board in this country, they are hurting. Businesses are hurting. The working people of this country are suffering tremendously. And it has a direct link to the political situation that exists in Guyana today. And he can play a very important role by conceding that the APNU AFC, that they have lost the election, and let us have a civilized and peaceful transition and have a developed country. And let us try, as you mentioned, Joe, let us, as the PPP has always been doing, try to keep the debate on issues, on policies and issues, and things that will help our country to grow, and not only for our country to grow, but for our people to grow culturally and intellectually as well in civilized and honest debates. And I would urge the de facto president, Mr. Granger, to think about that and think about the harm that is being done to the country by the resistance that they're putting up in the face of everyone, pointing that the fact that they've lost the election and urging you to go on the side of democracy and concede.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, former President, Mr. Donald Ramotar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have Mr. Ramotar with us tonight to relive some of the lessons and to, of course, give his own thoughts about what is happening with these elections that are being rigged in Guyana. As we know, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of institutions, a lot of religious and social bodies are calling on Mr. Granger to concede. He can, of course, put everything to a quick end, put all this agony to a quick end by conceding. However, he continues to hold on to power, and we certainly pray for the good health of all of our leaders in Guyana. And Leonard Gildari, the Center for Interreligious Dialogue, has just sent me a note too that they continue to pray for the health of all the leaders in Guyana, but they continue to ask that here you go, I call your name, sir, Mr. David Granger, do the right thing and concede and let Guyana move on. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you all in room 592, and along with my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildari, as we wish you to have a great weekend, I want to remind Kevin Smith. Kevin, I'm giving you back a minute of the night. And so we're going to make that up, my brother. Former President Ramotar, thank you so much for being with us tonight, sir. Leonard Gildari.
For having me. And I want to take the opportunity to extend my best regard to all your viewers, both, and I've noticed that you have sometimes I hear you calling people in Hong Kong and all over. So
yes,
I send my greetings to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Leonard Gildari, what's the plan for the weekend, my friend?
I have absolutely no idea. I think you need a break. I heard your voice cracking up today. I think you need some rest. But guess what? The people are waiting. So we'd have to see what develops. We could probably see you tomorrow. And of course, we could probably ask the President, Donald Ramotar, to come back again, too.
Thank you. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.
Anytime I'll be willing to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. And viewers and listeners all across Guyana, I know many of you are connected via radio, and so we don't necessarily see you online, but please know that we know that you are listening to us. And we do hope that we can all, I encourage everybody to continue to do a prayer for Guyana and continue to live a wonderful life without hate. We must fight against the wrong things, but not have any personal hate. So ladies and gentlemen, from room 592, we wish stay positive, stay safe, do your prayers, and I'm sure that the right thing will eventually and hopefully very quickly happen for one and all. Let's say thanks to Kevin Smith, Joshua Van Slightman, the entire Kaieteur Radio, Raj, and all of you guys working hard behind the scenes to make this program a success. And thanks to Glenn Lal and the owners of Kaieteur Radio for making this program free, available to the Guyanese public and our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful weekend and have a wonderful Friday night. Goodbye now.
Thank you.
Up here.
I'll call you.